We are back on All Bengals, Cincinnati Bengals talk. Lindsay Patterson, Duke Manyweather, who I get on pretty much once or twice a season, unfortunately, to talk about the good and the bad of offensive line, but he's always a great guest. Duke, how you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me back, Lindsay.
All right, we got to start with that week one game for the Cincinnati Bengals. And the first question I have to ask you, how does an offensive line prepare for a guy like Myles Garrett?
It's tough. It really is tough because Myles Garrett is a guy that really transcends many generations in terms of those. When you look back at the golden era that we like to call with those big offensive tackles, they also have very big DNs. Myles Garrett is that size, 6'5", 6'6", 275, but then has the agility to be able to really stick his foot in the ground and change directions, has the flexibility and stability to be able to bend the burst, and he has a diverse skill set. So really preparing for a guy like that is really a nightmare. And then when you add in the fact that you don't know where he's going to line up, it would be different if you said, all right, he's lining up over the right tackle every play, but when you start to move him down into a walker and he's standing over the center and standing over the guard, and they start to move him, it's really, really difficult to, one, account for him, and then two, to be able to prepare for him, say, as an Alex Kappa or Ted Karras. It puts those guys at a disadvantage. It is a form of athleticism and even like physical traits and really a skill set that those guys on the interior don't see down in and down out. And then when you're talking about a guy that's probably going to put on a gold jacket at some point, man, it's a tough draw for week one.
Yeah, 100%. And we'll stick with the Bengals offensive lineman. The PFF grades just came out, and maybe the highest one, Orlando Brown, was a pickup for the Bengals in free agency. They have him at left tackle. They moved Jonah Williams over to right tackle. I'll get to Jonah Williams in just a moment. Orlando Brown was the highest graded player. What did you think about Orlando Brown Jr. and really just his addition to this offensive line?
Yeah, well, Orlando has been really, really a solid tackle from his time in Baltimore and then Kansas City the last couple of years. So I thought, Cincinnati bringing Orlando Brown in was a really good draw for this offseason. Now, regardless of who you have at tackle, the fact of the matter is when you face a guy like Garrett, Garrett is going to be able to beat 90% of the tackles in the league. That 5% that are very good to good, that elite bunch, it'll be a matchup. So, Garrett's going to win his. But for the most part, I expect Orlando Brown to settle in and really be a pillar of and a bright spot for this Bengals offensive line moving forward this season, especially protecting Burrow. But, Orlando is no stranger to protecting, that high dollar quarterback and the guy is going to air it out. So, with that experience alone, you could make the argument that, they've upgraded the left tackle position, even though Jonah is still on the field, moving over to the right tackle. But I think they definitely got better at that position.
We'll flip over to the right side before I get to the guard position in just the center with this offensive line. Jonah Williams, a right tackle. Unfortunately, he struggled a lot at left tackle for the Cincinnati Bengals, and they decided to spend big money on Orlando Brown Jr. His one start at right tackle, how do you feel like he fared?
Well, I think we talked about this last year with Jonah. Jonah, unfortunately, has had and has dealt with a lot of injuries. And when you deal with that many injuries, you're always working to get back. You're always working to rehab to get back, and it's called return to play. And so when you're always in a return to play type program, you're making incremental progress in terms of skill development and just honing your craft. So with that being said, like, development gets slowed down and halted for guys when they've got to continue to deal with that return to play program and injuries. And that's really what Jonah's been the past couple of years, with this season being no exception. Coming off an injury, new position, it's a perfect storm to have a game like he had yesterday. Now, again, moving positions coming off that injury is going to take time and reps, real life reps of kind of problem solving and self-organizing, understanding that my landmarks and targeting and timing is going to be completely different when I'm departing from the right side. I think probably the last time Jonah played right tackle was back at Alabama, maybe his freshman year, if I'm not mistaken. So it's going to be an adjustment. And playing right tackle in the NFL, we know there's no weeks off. You get some of the best lining up over there right tackle. So I think, it's going to really take a couple of weeks to see, what Jonah is and can be at right tackle. But here's the thing, man. Oftentimes what you see show up at left tackle and right tackle, especially when it comes to fundamentals, typically are the same, detriments are typically the same. So it's really not about like figuring out right tackle, is continue to progress in the areas in which that he needed to progress in when he was playing left tackle. I mean, there's not going to be different in terms of in that regards, but the set points, the landmarks, the departures, just the peripheral, it's completely different on the other side, So fundamentals, that's what's going to need to be harped on in order for him to really be able to settle in and try to take the bull by the horns at right tackle.
Yeah, we'll go back to Cordell Volson. It's his year 2. He had his rookie year last year, and I always kind of feel like there's potential with Cordell Volson, but he struggled big time. And look, it's hard to give that comparison in year 2 of look who he's going against when you look at the Cleveland Browns defense. But Cordell Volson, how you feeling about him right now at the left guard position?
Really the same things we saw last year. The functional play strength is an issue. And just the consistency in the hands being opened up and pried up. You got to really be able to strain and really be able to sit into being able to stand guys up. And that's the biggest thing for it. Like, you got to be in position with the feet. And I think there's a level of functional strength that is missing. I think we talked about that last year. And it can be developed. But again, it's one of those things that take time. It's not just an off-season fix. It's being able to find out what leverages that he could play with that are beneficial to him, being able to understand that, like, elbows connected to hips. It's small stuff with his technique and play strength that can eventually be married and make a big difference.
When I talked to you last year, it was early on when this offensive line was struggling. I know a lot of people say those preseason reps really matter. Do you think that is a big deal with this team when you split?
I do.
Really?
I think with offensive line, you need those real live reps, not just like joint practices. You get a lot of work, but I think you need the timing of the game, the ebbs and the flows. So here's the thing that games present. Games present problems. They present adversity within those problems even further in terms of you needing to be able to self-organize and problem solve and really dig yourself out. Games present moments of uncertainty. Games present things that are completely unscripted that you may not have prepared for. And so within that, there's a human element of timing. There's a human element of seeing things through one set of eyes for the offensive line. There's a level of communication. There's a level of timing and communication on certain things like the double team or being able to stay on the same level to pass off stunts. And those are the things that you don't get those live action reps in when you don't have a full unit playing in preseason with your QB. So again, as I talked to you guys about this last year, when Lyle Collins had his struggles and, it was kind of things out of source, give it 4, 5, 6 weeks. And really, again, with new pieces, you got 2 new tackles essentially. It could take up to 8 weeks before guys really get to rolling and that communication and that soundness ends up showing up and being put on tape. But I think that it's going to be a great overreaction this morning and this week with it comes with the territory. It comes with the territory with, the Bengals have been so close the last couple of years. Joe Burrow just signed a massive contract. So any and everything will be scrutinized when it comes to Burrow. Anything and everything will be scrutinized when it comes to the O-line. So again, fans don't want to hear this. People yell at me all the time, but you got to be patient with these things. They do start to work out and figure themselves out. Well, they don't figure themselves out, but these teams and these guys are professionals and they start to figure it out.
You mentioned Lyle Collins. Right now, he's going to be out for at least 3 more games. And I think the biggest thing with him is he was battling an injury most of last year. And then, of course, he tears his ACL
Yep.
on Christmas Eve. And he's had time to just rehab and get back to 100%. They're going to keep him on the roster. I think that's extremely important because you look at the AFC Championship game last year, they're down 3 offensive linemen. And that was a huge difference maker against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
With Lyle Collins, when he comes back and you say your offensive line is, they're still trying to gel. It could take 4 to 5 games, but Lyle is fully healthy. Could you see them inserting him as a guard?
I don't know what they would do, to be honest with you. That's one of those things where it sounds cliche, but I think you got to really evaluate. I think a lot of teams after 4 weeks and good team. Let me reframe. Most teams self scout all the time. Most teams self scout, self evaluate to kind of see where they are in terms of personnel, when they see in terms of schematic, what's working, what's not working. But really, that 4 week mark, I know a lot of teams not so much do a reset, but they do a recalibration of, all right, where are we? What free agents are available? Who do we have that maybe can contribute on our roster? Who can we get guys reps? What can we move around? So I think right around where Lyle becomes available, who knows? I mean, it could be knock on wood, but you never know when somebody gets injured and you may have to plug your next guy in. So the goal is always to get your best 5 on the field. If they feel like Lyle is their best 5 and gives them their best opportunity to run their offense and win football games, and I think they're going to find a position for him. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. And I don't know. I don't know the level that Lyle is at. I don't know where he's at with his rehab. I don't know where he's at with his return to play at all in terms of how he's moving and all that type of stuff. But I'm hoping for the Bengals' sake, and I'm hoping for Lyle's sake that, he's healthy and kind of return to some semblance of himself. I know last year was rough, just as he got healthy with the ankle, the hip, and the back. The ACL came. So it'll be interesting to see.
One more question, and a lot of people are criticizing him. Honestly, it was early last year, and we're seeing it again after one game. Frank Pollack is the offensive line coach, run game coordinator. You're familiar with Frank Pollack. How do you feel with him as the offensive line coach?
Again, it's gonna you got 2 new tackles, so it's essentially a new unit. It's going to take time. It's going to take time, and it goes back to really the players and the communication and the timing and all that stuff, especially with not having those preseason games. I think Frank is really good at what he does, and every year, again, the overreaction at the beginning of the year, but then it gets rolling, and all of a sudden you start to see that O-line start to take over. There's a really good clip of Frank late into the season where they went in and they started to close guys out. And I forgot what game it was. And I remember I sent him that clip, and Frank's reply was, "God damn, there's cameras everywhere. I can find it right here." It was against the Buffalo Bills.
I remember that. I mean, he told him, look, there were a lot of people doubting them going into that Buffalo game. The snow was coming down, and Frank's like, I'm going to get my guys ready. And he did.
Absolutely. And I remember right after that release, I sent that to him, and he was fired up about it. But again, man, it's not a quick fix, man. When it comes to O-line, when it comes to running the offense, when it comes to the mesh, it takes time. And I think I've said this 3 years in a row after week 1 with you, but fans are not going to want to hear it. Fans are some of the most impatient people on earth. I get it. Fans is short for fanatic, and people are fanatical about their Bengals and their respective teams. But at the end of the day, it takes time. It takes time for these guys to work these things out and work this mesh out and to continue to develop and move forward. And then, Joe Burrow is not going to have another game like he had yesterday. So I mean, that's another thing too. So if you want to look at like outliers and anomalies and things of that nature, like you got to feel confident that he's not going to have another game like that. The offensive line will be better, get better. I think the interior, once they figure out the communication, and they need to be a little more stout. But it was just a tough draw yesterday with Tomlinson and with Myles Garrett and some of the things they did on the move. They really exploited some of those matchup issues.
100%. Duke Manyweather, every year, the annual interview with you.
Yep.
I really appreciate your time and the king over at O-Line Masterminds. But where can fans find all your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've actually got an app coming out that will be released any day now. I've been saying that for months, but any and everything when it comes to tech, we want to make sure this thing is perfect. And what you're going to be able to find on there is for offensive linemen specifically, there'll be drill work on there, there'll be lifting, there'll be workouts. But for the average fans and the O-line enthusiasts, for media and people that just want to learn, there's going to be a lot of resources and materials just to learn. There's going to be a section just on your basic blocks and some of the terminology that you may hear every Saturday and Sunday on college and NFL football that you may not have understood, but this is going to give you a deeper level of understanding. There's going to be 6 years of O-Line Mastermind Summit on there, broken down into categories. So if you want to know something about pass protection and twist pickup and hand usage and things of that nature, there's going to be 100 to 200 clips on just each topic. So we're really excited about it. I've been working on this for a long time. So I'm really excited to get this thing launched and out the door.
I can't wait until it's out. I'll download it as soon as I see it. Thank you so
All
much.
righty. Thanks for having me, Lindsay.